Hi, I'm Erin Marcus, former corporate executive turned entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business. Welcome to the Ready Yet podcast. We're excited to bring you more than 100 episodes of interviews and insights designed to help entrepreneurs get the financial and emotional freedom they need in order to build a business and a life they're proud of. All right, welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast with my guest today, Frankie Pannell, who we keep deciding what we're going to talk about because once we get started, we don't stop talking.
Yes.
But I'm excited about this for a million different reasons. I want to introduce you and your view to my audience and your knowledge to my audience. But before we get into all the official things, I will let you tell everybody who you are and what you do so that I don't violate any any things I'm not allowed to say. So
I love that.
I'll just leave it with that. But please introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, like as you said, my name is Frankie, and I have a pretty extensive background in everything security related. I worked for the government for about 16 years, both at state and federal level. Recently was acquired from the Secret Service. I was specialized in the Secret Service for a little over 11 years and was made an offer I couldn't refuse from a big tech company to come in and kind of do the same thing I was doing for the president, but doing it for the executives of, big tech. So that's what I do now. And with that, I also run a security consulting firm, which is pretty much anything and everything security related, whether it be ad hoc security details to just telling people, hey, this is what you need to fix before it's too late. And I also do a lot of speaking engagements, and that's probably the bulk of what I do. Speaking engagements on security matters, a lot of security consultations, emerging trends in the field, things that are going to make your business safer and things that are going to make the world a little bit safer. That's me in a nutshell. I'm a single father with 4 beautiful children who are my entire world. And yeah, that's me in a very accurate, small nutshell.
Small nutshell. And I think my favorite thing, like you're a perfect example, is going to make fun of you here for a second. So everything in my world gets related to dogs, wildlife, or the gym, because that's my experience, right?
Yeah.
Rottweilers don't bark because they don't need to.
They don't need to. Just look at them.
That's what you remind me of. You are so freaking chill about the experience.
Right? I love that.
Like you're so chill about the experiences that you've had. And yet to the rest of us, because we talk about you in front of you and behind you about why is he so chill about all of it.
I love that. That's so funny.
So that's what you remind me of, right? Doesn't hurt the image that you're like twice my size, I think.
Well, I mean, I've been told I'm a pretty big guy.
Pretty big guy, yeah.
I don't feel like it though. I'm like those Great Dane puppies when they walk into, like, I can't go into any type of like liquor shop or anything like that, because the dude who knocks over the display,
right.
All that, that's me. When you look over at the grocery store and there are oranges rolling down the aisle,
that was you.
That's me. I don't realize how big I am until I turn into something.
I have the opposite. I don't realize how little I am. I have the opposite problem. I'm the tiny little chihuahua, right? Throwing the big giant fit.
Yeah.
Right. But I want to get into this security thing because yes. I don't think it's talked about. I think it's worried about, right. Or it's not, I don't want to say worried about as much as it should have, but the awareness, like, as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, we are all working virtually all over the place. Right. There's cybersecurity, there's personal security, we're all traveling all over the place. Right. And I think because also the 24-hour media telling us that the world's on fire.
You're in danger.
And I have a degree in mass communications. And one of the things that we studied back in the day was how does the view of the world get molded by what you're inundated with. So right. I'd love to have a conversation with you of what are some real threats that we should be aware of as we move through this world, and what are exaggerated, perceived, or what I'm like tempted to call irrelevant threats. They might be real, but there's not really anything you can do about it. So
Right.
do you have to make yourself crazy on a daily basis over it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's a great one. It's a great question, but it's a great prompt to the conversation. What should you worry about? What shouldn't you? And there is no short answer. So I can't say, well, the short answer is this.
That's why we're doing a podcast and not a book,
Right.
right?
Right. So, I mean, one, it's going to be different for everyone depending on what your business is. I think something that's ubiquitous would be cyber, right?
Yeah.
So, cybersecurity, and, we hear about it all the time. The reason why that's going to be the biggest threat for a small business, for a large business, because of how much commerce is done virtually now. And so, the standard for cybersecurity was kind of set with, we called it the Heartland breach, which happened, I want to say 2000, I'm dating myself, 2007.
I'm older than you. It's okay.
2007, 2008, somewhere around there was the Heartland breach. And basically it was one of the biggest credit card breaches of American commerce in history. A lot of people got their credit cards hacked, stolen. And what happens in that situation, there's these hackers, they'll steal your numbers and they'll sell them to people who produce white plastic. And white plastic is exactly what it sounds like. It's a blank credit card that has a magnetic strip. And so it doesn't have a name on it or anything, but your information gets put on that card and the rest, as they say, is history. Because of that, the world keeps getting smaller and smaller because of, improvements in technology. I like to joke that even now, so I have a Google device in almost every single room in my house. And my kids now, I had to learn a hard lesson to not link my credit card to my Prime account.
When a 5-year-old knows how to
Because it's literally
order things.
It's like, hey, Google, order this. And 3 days later, I have stuff showing up, Barbie gear showing up at my house. I'm like, what is going on?
That's awesome.
So cyber is something, even on a small scale, if you own a mom and pop shop, something you need to be concerned with, because again, what virtual commerce will do, the biggest thing it does, it eliminates human error, which makes your company way more profitable. And it also expands your reach. So if you sell homemade pies in Tulsa, Oklahoma, well, you can sell them to someone living on Fifth Avenue. And so that's a very real industry that's going to keep growing and growing.
And I'm curious what you see. So we just saw a merger. I forgot who bought who of Capital One and Discover Card. And truthfully, what they really wanted was access to that processing platform, right?
Yes.
You can't build that anymore. That's like,
yes. Yeah.
right. They bought it. They bought it.
Yep.
And so interestingly enough, what we're seeing at kind of all at the same time is more access for everybody, but more off-putting of the responsibility.
Right. Yep.
Right. So now not only are you able to do business, but now, and I'm going to make these words up because I don't know whose rules are what, but such and such Visa, who used to provide insurance, is now looking for a reason to not pay out when things happen. So they're going to come after the business who allowed the processor to work, right?
Yep.
Like everyone wants to kick the can down the hill as to whose fault things are.
Yeah, absolutely. Because security in every industry is a line item, right? Security is not going to bring in money for you. It's just an expense that you have to pay out to make sure your customers or your providers are all secure. And so where like credit cards are issued, even though they're stamped by Visa, they're issued by the bank. Whatever bank is tied to your account, that's who's issuing the card. And to your point, Visa, even though they have a budget for fraud and loss, there's a due process they have to go through to make sure, do we really have to pay this out?
Right.
And there was one thing a lot of people don't know, I think the Truth in Lending Act of 86 or 87, I think it was, you automatically have insurance built into your credit card. But there's another line item there that they'll try to sell you credit card insurance. And it's just, to me, it's always funny because a lot of people will take it because of what you're explaining. Like, I don't want Visa to then come after me because this happened and I don't have insurance for it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They're trying, it's a process. And I don't know if I want to call it due diligence, but in their fraud department, that's what they're trying to do, to find out how this isn't their fault.
It's the same way insurance works now.
Yes.
You know, you see in the news the stories about, grandma suing her son
Right.
for, because she slipped on the stairs. Well, grandma didn't do that. Grandma's health insurance
Right.
wanted to find somebody else's fault
Yes.
for not
Yeah.
cover the bills, and they forced the issue.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's 100% correct. And it's something that if you really take a hard look at why these things are happening, it's not a popular answer. We only have ourselves to blame,
Mhm.
right? Because if you take a much more tangible issue that people can understand, think about the smash and grab job at
Right. Oh my God. Right.
some,
Here in Chicago, it's
some
insane.
local restaurant, or some utility store, something that has a really cash-based business. The parameters behind that, why the person committed it, is really what the root of the problem is, right? So if you're thinking, I would say 98% of people aren't going to do a smash and grab job just because they're generally good people. They're just good people who want to provide for their family or whatever they have. They want to be able to go out to eat on a nice meal once in a while,
Mhm.
and they're genuinely happy. I would say you have probably about 1.5% of the people who would definitely do the smash and grab job because they don't really care, but they don't want to get caught. They don't do it because, oh, I don't want to go to jail or I don't want something on my record. Then you have about 0.5%
Who
who
just don't care.
just don't care. They want to see the world burn, or they're dealing with, an addiction.
Addiction. Yeah.
And so when people would talk to me about stuff like this, about security matters and why it's happening, I always ask them, I was like, if you take a look at our government nowadays, Congress nowadays, the things that they're concerned about, I'm trying to think of an example, like parameters on sports betting or performance enhancing drugs. We'll have these meetings on things like that. But how many meetings have we had on why Flint, Michigan doesn't still have clean drinking water? How come we're still giving these breaks to these big pharmaceutical companies who are making
Billion.
mounds and mounds of profit when we have a legit fentanyl problem here in the United States? So when I tell people about when you're talking about security in your hometown, I would take a look at what's happening at a national level that's affecting this population of people that are committing these small crimes. Again, there are going to be people who do it no matter what, just because
Well,
they want to see the world burn.
right. They're angry. There's mental illness. There's a variety of.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the other end of that is, the things that Congress wants to discuss nowadays, and I don't want to spin this off into too much of a tangent, but things they want to discuss nowadays aren't necessarily pertinent to the everyday person. It's a lot of wardeering for their constituents. They're saying,
Right.
well, look at my senator. He or she is raging against the Republicans. He or she is raging against the Democrats, and that's what I want to hear. And yet crime in their town is spiking because no one really wants to address the issue
Underlying issues.
that's affecting them. So a bigger example of what not to worry. So cyber is something that's always going to be there. That's something that you definitely need to concern yourself with. Your business needs to have an arm of cybersecurity. Someone who, and a lot of people will outsource it to an online resource. Someone who does, I can do this from California. I'll provide infrastructure for you and your business.
And there's a lot of easy ways. Like one of the things that I started doing a long time ago is I only use one encrypted credit card processor, and I don't take people's information. Like I never have their information.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that it's not on the contract, because
Yep.
to me, DocuSign is easier to hack
Right.
than Stripe.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So it's not
Absolutely.
on the contract. It's not in my CRM.
Yep.
The only
Absolutely.
place somebody's credit card is directly entered by them.
Yep.
So I don't even have the number.
We'll have the number. And that's what's happening a lot with these, take restaurants, for
So that's
example.
like a little tiny thing that you
Yeah.
like. And Stripe made it easy, for example. It's not a big thing for them because they're not, I don't know one from the other, but
Right.
I can make a link in a minute and give
Yes.
you a special link just for your payment,
Yep.
and then never ever
Never
touch.
have to.
Ne-
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a smart play with doing it. And a lot of these restaurants are doing the same thing with cash. They'll tell you right when you walk in the door, we don't do anything in cash. If, it's all card or
Well,
Apple
here's something
Wallet.
interesting that I was taught, and we'll see if you tell me if it's still accurate or not, coming out of the social service.
Yes.
Right, security, right?
Yep.
In the United States, it's illegal to not accept the legal US tender.
Yes. Yes, it is.
You cannot tell somebody you don't take cash
Yes. Yes.
because that is the legal tender of the
United
country.
States. So a play around that is we don't process anything larger than a $50 bill
Right.
or anything larger than whatever set amount that is. So
I
there's
used to
very
say to
little
people
cash.
when I used to manage apartment complexes and people would want to not write a check, they'd want to give me cash. And I'd
Yep.
say, that's fine. I am 5 feet tall and 95 pounds. Do you want me to be the only thing between your rent and, let's
And
just
I'm just
trade.
saying, I'm putting
Just
that out
saying.
there. That was your disclaimer.
That's my disclaimer. Somebody says, give me that bag. The answer is here,
There
right?
you go.
Just saying.
I love it. Yeah, that's. I think on the other end of that, cyber will be there. That I'll call that one end of the spectrum. The other end, which everyone wants to talk about right now, is AI. Right, and people are like, "Oh, I'm fearful of AI. The robots are going to take over." The best way I can explain it with AI is, no matter how advanced the technology becomes, there's always going to be someone who needs to be there to hit execute.
Yep.
Right. So we create the program. I say we, I can't do it. Engineers they'll create the program, and there'll be a lot of processes that can happen with AI after that program is written, but there's always going to need to be someone who's there to execute, to do audits. AI is not going to be able to audit itself, and those are parameters are being built in for this specific reason. So what I try to tell people who are in industries that are very tech savvy or tech leaning, just be in the top 5% of your of your
Oh my
group.
God, I say the same thing. To me, it has
Be in the
never
top five.
been like I understand the marketplace is now noisier because there's more volume, meaning some people are screaming, but there's more quantity. But
Yes.
it's almost never been easier to stand out
Yes.
because I can now tell you instantly when somebody started using AI for their posts
Yes. Yeah.
because there's a much larger variety of emojis involved.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
I am older, I am of the group that uses emojis. The kids make
Yep.
fun of us, right? But
Yep.
there's like four.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's like
Yeah.
four. I know how to use like
The
four.
winky
I know how to
face is
find
mine.
up, right, right.
I do a lot of
Right.
the winky
There's the
face.
smiley face, there's the fire one, right?
Yep.
There's probably the dog.
Yeah.
I don't remember because it's not normal for me. It's not how I grew up that there's like 800 of them I could pick from.
Right. 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 Yep.
So if you go look, there's a couple of my posts. I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But you can tell and all, right? Like this is an opportunity for people who really are the thought leaders in their market
Mm,
to stay standing out because you're not
absolutely.
going to sound like a, not to mention, let's face it, 90% of people who use AI are not buying the premium version, which means the data they're using is 2 years old.
Right. Right. It's the free version, the free demo
The free
version.
version.
Yep. Yep.
Now, I
Absolutely.
am a big fan of like Grammarly, where it fixes it for me.
Grammarly's pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of so me personally, like I do a lot of, I'll write a lot of music. I play a bunch of instruments. I like to write a lot of music. And there are tons of apps that are where the songwriting process is still very generic, where at least for me, you get inspired by something you see or something that you thought of. But what AI has done in that regard, it bridges the gap more efficiently.
Oh, totally.
I'll have a tune in my head to where like something like Tonally, I can just hum it into
Yeah.
my phone, and then it has perfect pitch. The basis perfect pitch app. It'll match pitch to what I am thinking, and then boom, there are the chords. So I'm a huge fan of things like that. And I think I've told you before, I firmly believe we all live better through technology, science, chemistry. But I think advancements in that make us better. But with that, there will always be that percentage of people who find an avenue of how can I gain the system through things like this. So if you're a small business owner and you're not using AI, you're already behind the curve.
Well,
You
it
definitely
makes you
are.
so much more efficient. Like we are using it
Crazy.
ways that is like, even the podcast, like when we this podcast has been out since October 2020.
Mhm.
It used to take us all, not just because we didn't know what the heck we were doing, but like even once we figured it out,
Right.
it used to take a lot of hours
Yeah.
between producing the podcast, doing
Yes.
the images, grabbing the highlights, doing the like
Right.
that used to take a ton of time.
Right.
And it's
Right.
now an hour
Yes. Yeah. And
for
that
all of it. It's amazing.
and that's my point with when it comes to the human error factor of it, that it's just going to be all but eliminated when it comes to things like AI or cyber. And I think if like the advice I would give would be like, take grocery shopping, for example. We all have the self-checkout, which I always say my groceries should be about 3% cheaper if I go through self-checkout
I
because I'm
agree.
doing all the work. I'm doing all the work myself. Why is it the same if I go through the 10 items or less thing? But if you're a clerk, just be at the top 5% of clerks who are at the grocery store, because when AI comes through and it's all automated, you'll still have a job there. But for small business, those are two ends of the spectrum. I think there are caveats to that. Again, the smash and grab jobs are falling by the wayside. They're still there. I don't want anyone to think that they're not still there. But they're falling by the wayside unless it's more like a crime of opportunity. Someone leaves a cash drawer open and walks away.
Well, and the retail in downtown, downtown Chicago, those retail, they're very organized. And I think that's
right,
what's very,
right.
very scary.
I think the biggest caveat that's more pertinent to what I do with that would be learning institutions, whether it be elementary, middle, high schools, or colleges. Those things, because of the state of the world, specifically the United States, those things are never going to go away. The hardest thing to account for in law enforcement is the lone wolf. And you would think it'd be easier. It's actually a lot harder. It's easier when there are more people involved because people tend to screw up. And the more people are involved.
So we've had this conversation, and this is why social media just makes me laugh. Public schools in Chicago in the 70s and 80s, when we have our reunions, the biggest joke is, how are more of us like, okay, what, how are we not
Right,
in more trouble?
right.
And the thing we always knew was you never said it because that's how you ended up in jail.
Jail, yep.
Don't talk about it. The more people who know what's going on, the more likelihood of someone finding out that something is going on.
Yeah, and that's exactly how we find them. When I say me, I mean we. I mean the law enforcement industry as a whole. But the lone wolf, the Sandy Hook shooter, Uvalde, Texas, things like that, you're already reactive. And so when it comes to, not that institutions are thought of as a business, even though they are, everything you do at that point is reactive. And and I've been on units and teams who have practiced those active shooter scenarios, and everything is based off of, when the shooter does this is what we will do.
Right.
So then it falls on the institution to be as proactive as possible in that field. And a lot of institutions will use a courtesy officer. Courtesy officer was the standard until the Parkland shooting in Florida. When that happened, it was okay, well, one courtesy officer does not proactive security make. And he or she, that officer, is almost they're at an automatic loss, one way or another. Right. So if they go in by
and that officer was never, like, we had that even in, like, that guy was there to help.
Yes. It's a show of force.
Right. That role was never, and truthfully, in my world, that officer was really there from a community policing concept of making friends with the kids while they're young enough to influence.
Right. Yes. I mean, and that's what COP is, community oriented.
That's what they used to be.
Community oriented policing does a lot. And, when I was living in Manhattan working for the Secret Service, the commissioner at the time was really big on cops getting out of their vehicles and walking the beat.
I remember
for that specific reason, for just go talk to local youth, go shoot a couple of basketballs with, the people who are out there on the blacktop. And with these school shootings, the oldest one I can remember, or the first one I can remember, was Columbine.
Right.
That's the first time I'm sure there were before that. That was the first one I remember and being like, oh my God, that's heartbreaking. And I think almost 3 weeks later, there was a prayer circle in Kentucky. And these students were praying for what happened in Columbine, and the same thing happened. And maybe it's just because that's the first one I remember, but I remember it striking a chord more with more people than what I feel like it happens nowadays.
Well, I think one of the sad things about humans, right? We were chatting before. One of the sad things about humans is how fast we normalize things in
We
order to
have
be
to.
just to function.
Yeah, we have to. It's our coping mechanism.
And unfortunately, that's now the normal we have accepted.
Right. Right.
It is the
Right.
normal we have accepted. Otherwise, we would have done something about this. It's
Yeah.
been decades that this is
Decades.
going on.
Decades.
So what does, my question is probably unfair to ask. I'm just interested in your opinion.
Yeah.
Most small business owners are already battling fears.
Mhm.
You're battling internal fears. You're battling imposter syndrome. You're battling all of the limiting beliefs that you have holding you back, right? We're already battling neuroscience.
Right.
Keep
Right.
yourself safe. Keep yourself safe. Don't put yourself out there.
Yep.
I guess it's like, what is someone I've taken I'll position it this way. I have taken the position that the world is what the world is. Maybe it's a little fatalist, but I don't feel that I am able to influence it
Mhm.
as an individual. So I'm just gonna do it. I'm again, I was raised by a cop. I'm pretty aware of what's going on
Right.
around me, right? I have good situational awareness,
Right.
but I can't let it stop me,
Mhm. Yep. I
right?
totally,
Like,
I totally get that. Yeah, I totally get that. And I mean, you're right. There is nothing I can say that's going to be,
just do this one thing and you'll be fine.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. So I guess if you're a small business owner, and depending on what your industry is, the biggest thing you have to accept is that if someone chooses you, there's nothing you can do. Right.
I
So
think that's a hard, like, people don't like, it feels
they
very
don't.
unsafe.
They don't, which is why a lot of people will tell me they don't like to watch the news because they don't want to know that they're in danger of this, that, or the other. But that's not something that is just exclusive to the United States or to Chicago or to Atlanta. I mean, that is really, it's around the globe. If someone just decides, you know what, I don't like that Chipotle, want to do harm to it for whatever reason, there's not much you can do in that regard. Now, there are steps you can take to minimize that. I think a big one is your employees making sure that they are drilled on, hey, if this happens, this is what we do, and make sure they know there is no amount of cheeseburger or money that's worth getting into with the customer. Right. And again, I am ignorant to this industry. I've never served in the service industry.
Well, also, here's the deal, Frankie. You got to be a special kind of stupid to do that to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, you're big and
Yeah.
right?
So
You stand up straight, you make eye contact.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. That's very true. That's very, very true. But I'll watch these videos sometimes of people who will get into it with either a robber or even someone who's just disgruntled with
Right.
the level of their service, and they'll start going back and forth. And the next thing you know, a fight breaks out. Like if it were me and I put myself in that situation, if you're screaming at one of my employees because you didn't like your order, your cheeseburger was this, that, okay, can I give you another one? Or here's your money back. I apologize, and let it move on. But the whole tit for tat of going back and forth and then physically getting an altercation with them, to me,
But yeah.
I'd want to have my employees understand, listen, it's not worth it for any regard. It helps to be maybe a little chummy with your local precinct, your firefighters, your law enforcement, bring them a meal every now and again. That does help. And again, I gave a talk at a school that was in, we call it HIDA, a high intensity drug trafficking area. That's a labelization that's given to certain areas by the DEA where there's just known narcotic traffic. This one was in Houston, and this private, Christian-based school sat right in the middle of HIDA. And they were having issues with break-ins and crimes of opportunity, people getting their gym shoes stolen, things like that. And so they refused to put up a security fence around the school. So what I suggested was, what if you had a community function? Because they had an outdoor basketball blacktop that had like 4 or 5 different basketball hoops. I was like, have a barbecue and just invite the local community to come hang out, shoot hoops and stuff. And so what's happened in the probably year and a half since I've spoken there and gave them a few pointers was that school almost now is a protected area
Right.
by the people who are doing probably 80% of the crime in that town, because they don't want anything to happen to their place where they can just go chill and hang out. Now, they're not inside the school, so to speak, but they're definitely on school property, sits at a major intersection in that town. And so people who probably, I can't say for sure that they're doing it, but people who are probably committing some of the crime there, they'll play basketball at that public court. And the school has now kind of been left alone because of the stance that they have with, or the
Well, and what you're really describing to me is one of the reasons we're seeing an increase in all the problems is a breakdown of community.
For sure.
It's an absolute break. Like, and I agree with you. Like, are we better off because of the technology, or are there's problems that come with it?
Right.
The amazing thing is that you and I met virtually. We did get a chance to
Yeah.
meet in person. We've talked. Like, this would have never happened before.
Ever. Yep.
So there's, right, I have clients in New Zealand and a team member in Spain, and like unbelievable, amazing things.
Yep.
And yet with it has brought the anonymity of the internet, so that there's people who, and you just, right, it's like, this is the world we live in.
Right.
Be as safe as you can be. Don't let it stop you from doing the things that you want to do, but at the same time be smart about it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Keep your head on the swivel. I think, the second we stop taking care of each other is when the system breaks down, right? I mean, shouldn't say every month. I try to do it every month, but my neighbors all love me because I have like this little, I should have brought it. I have this little, it's in the garage, this little sign that says, 2-minute conversation that's the cost of a hot dog. A 5-minute conversation costs a cheeseburger. And I'll pull my grill out front and I'll put the sign up, and it's just a great way for the neighbors to come around as they're driving and walking with their kids to engage. And they love it. They get a big kick out of it. And I really think, and that's honestly why I went into the field. I grew up knowing I was going to be a Secret Service agent. I didn't know how to do that, but I remember being 4 years old and being like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a special agent with the Secret Service, to the point where I'm almost envious of people who are like in high school or college. Like, what do you want to do? And everyone's like, oh, maybe this, maybe that. I don't really know. I never had that dynamic ever. I always had the same answer to the question of, I want to be a Secret Service agent. I learned at a very young age, the one thing that sets me off more than anything else is a bully. I cannot, to the point where it's almost unhealthy how quickly I see red. And so I've always had a calling to want to take care of and protect other people, which has kind of led to my downfall in my personal life, choosing people who
need to be taken care of,
need help.
Yeah, there's a, right, that's like the fireman with the savior complex.
Yeah.
Makes for some poor choices on occasion.
Yes, I've had to learn hard lessons in the past from that. But I firmly believe if you have the ability to take care of someone else, you have the duty to do so. Now, not to your own detriment.
Right. You don't have to light yourself on fire to keep other people.
Exactly. But I think that dynamic, to your point of the breakdown of society, that we're so blessed to live where we are. And I think one of the best things about this country might be also one of the worst things. It's all the freedoms we have. But that type of community atmosphere, taking care of one another, will go a long way for this. And I think small business owners are in a unique opportunity, and I've always been, to be a small business owner, to have that connection with community to where they're being patronized by the locals because they're the anti-capitalistic endeavor.
Right. Even if your business is virtual,
right,
you still have a community around you.
Absolutely, you do. Absolutely. I would even argue that that's where most small businesses are coming about nowadays. I mean, when I graduated high school in 2000,
hey, and you're starting with a 2. So mine doesn't start with a 2. My
there was.
college graduation doesn't start with you. Okay.
I love it. There was no, I'll make a living off of being an influencer. My son, who is fairly gifted, he wants to be a YouTuber. And now I can't tell him, well, maybe you should focus on one of the hard sciences. There are people who make, really good livings off of this virtual world that we live in. But you're absolutely right. There is a community, and I would argue even a bigger community can be reached through it. I've met Mr. Beast a few times just because of the work that I do. He and I have crossed paths quite often, and to where he is like, "Oh, that's so cool what you do." I'm like, dude, honestly, when I go to bed at night, there are probably count on one hand the number of people who care about what. Whereas what you do in your community is very, very, because again, he's touching so many people who are then touching people and so on and so forth. I think again, I personally, in all the training and knowledge that I have in the field that I'm in, I think the world is a much better place with technology,
Well, and
chemistry,
I think that's
science.
important to hear because I think there's a million people out there screaming the opposite and they have no firsthand knowledge. They have
Right.
zero training.
Right.
And I mean, that's a great place to leave this off because, you and I can talk for days. We have.
We literally can and have.
We can and have. I think that's a really important note. If you're gonna take it, like if you're gonna take medical advice, you want it from someone who's been trained. If you're gonna take mechanical advice about your car, you want it from someone who knows what you're doing. So if the person who is trained to your level, the experience to your level is telling you,
Yep.
yeah, you got to be careful, but
Right.
you're better off because of this
Right.
than
Yeah,
not.
absolutely.
Like, start there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because if you look at it in smaller terms, if you look at it, the horse and buggy versus the automobile, right? Are you safer in a horse and buggy? Yeah, because you're only going to go maybe 15, 20 miles an hour. There aren't all these wrecks where people are being ejected from vehicles and stuff. But, you're not going to get down the road and be more efficient than you would be in an automobile. So technology, one, as we all know, it's not going anywhere. It's going to keep improving. The hope is that the safety measures with technology will also improve. Understand that there's always going to be an arm of individuals who just want to see the world burn, who are gonna
You
try.
can't live your life based on
You
that.
can't. You can't. And really, and that's back to our points of the community atmosphere. That's where we take care of each other. And I don't really care what political base you adhere to, religion, anything. So much of day-to-day society is just don't be a jerk. I don't know if we can cuss on this podcast, but it's just don't be a
Right.
good person.
Don't be a jerk. This
Just
is
be
not
a good.
hard. This is
It
not
isn't
hard.
hard.
Don't be a
It
jerk.
isn't hard.
It's free to be nice.
It's free to be
Free to
nice.
be nice.
It's nice to be nice. Yeah, I would, if there were any takeaways from the talk that I would give, would just be what you're saying. Be aware. It is a good thing, technology, especially if you're a small business owner. Definitely, if you haven't already, definitely invest in some cybersecurity, and then just prepare your employees for random acts of violence that could happen. That would be the biggest takeaways I could offer.
So if people want to stalk you until all of your non-disclosure agreements are up and you can spill some of your secrets, how do they? We're all gonna wait.
Right?
It's not a short wait, but we're all gonna wait. Only imagine.
Yeah.
Where do they find you? What's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so there are three good ways to get a hold of me right now for business related stuff. One is in my LinkedIn account, which is r.frankpannell, Pannell. You'll see my picture up there, something like that. And that is fairly, I said it's only been up for maybe 6 months. That's still something that's relatively new for me.
I remember when I met you, I thought that someone was scamming me because I'm like, this man doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, you won't find much.
Friends.
You won't find much of me out there by ways of the internet, but it's growing. As the business grows, it'll grow. That's a good way. Also, the two emails that will come directly to me are PannellFrankie@gmail and then frank@frankpannell.com. So just my name, super, super original. Nothing too creative there. But I did, and I know we talked about it. So actually, this will be only the second time I've ever plugged this. I did start a podcast with a close friend of mine he has guided me through a lot of, personal stuff. And we found, a lot of men need to have that sounding board, just to have talks that men can't, or I should say can't, don't traditionally.
They weren't right. They don't talk to each other the way that women
No, we don't.
100%.
So it's called Fridays with Frankie, and it's basically what you and I just did. It's just a conversation of some random topic. But those are the best ways to get a hold of me. Business is growing, which we're excited about. Maybe excited isn't the right word. It's the world we live in. And because the world we live in is keeping me employed. So
Good point.
it's providing, food for my babies. So.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for spending time with me. This is
interesting.
We'll make sure all the links are in the show notes.
Definitely.
And can't wait to share this with the world.
And as always, great talking with you. And I look forward to next time.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I truly enjoy bringing these stories of success and inspiration to you. Please join us in our mission to empower entrepreneurs to be in charge of their businesses and in charge of their lives by sharing this with anyone you know who would benefit from our tactical and motivating advice, leaving us a review, and letting us know if there are any particular topics you would really appreciate hearing about. See you next time.